Hello students, I am VLN Swarupini, lecturer in biochemistry from Sri Venkateswara College of Arts and Sciences, which is affiliated to Adikavi Nannaya University, Rajahmundry. Now I would like to discuss about third biochemistry, that is third BSc biochemistry 5A paper, and from this topic we already discussed unit 1 topics. Now let's see about the rest of the topics from unit 1. Now let's see about digestion and absorption of proteins. In the previous classes we discussed about digestion and absorption of carbohydrates and digestion and absorption of lipids. Now let's see about proteins. Okay, now let's start the topic. The proteins subjected to digestion and absorption are obtained from two sources, that is dietary and endogenous. Here what happens, proteins which are undergoing digestion and absorption in our body are from two sources. One is from dietary and another source is from endogenous. Dietary is nothing but the protein content which we take through our food diet, whereas endogenous sources are endogenous is nothing but proteins which are synthesized in our body. Dietary and endogenous. Dietary is from is taken from out of the body in the form of food, and endogenous is inside our body, like few proteins get synthesized in our body, and these proteins also get digested and absorbed. The intake of dietary proteins is in the range of 50 to 100 grams per day, and about 30 to 100 grams per day of endogenous proteins is derived from the digestive enzymes and worn out cells of digestive tract. That means per day we should consume around 50 to 100 grams of proteins. That means we should maintain our diet with 50 to 100 grams of proteins every day, and that's why we should take more protein content in our food. Protein sources are like pulses and meat, milk. These are all the protein rich sources. And apart from the dietary proteins, our body will also produce around 30 grams to 100 grams of proteins in our body per day. That means not only our dietary proteins but also endogenous proteins will be synthesized in our body to maintain the dietary proteins in our body. Okay, and how these endogenous proteins are derived from digestion by digestive enzymes and worn out cells. That means cells which are damaged, those cells will be digested in the digestive tract. That means here endogenous proteins will be derived from the action of the digestive enzymes, and also cells which are worn out in our digestive tract. These are sources of the endogenous proteins. And dietary proteins are denatured and cooked on cooking, and therefore easily digested. That means if we take proteins in raw form, what will happen is it will take it is very hard to digest, and it will take larger period of time. Okay, that's why cooking of protein content is very essential. And dietary proteins, these will be denatured on cooking. That's why after eating protein content, these protein content will be easily digested by little denature of those dietary proteins by cooking process. Okay, and proteins are degraded by a class of enzymes, namely hydrolases, which specifically cleave the peptide bonds, hence known as peptidases. Okay, that means proteins are digested or degraded with the help of hydrolases enzymes, and we can call these hydrolases enzymes as peptidases, as these hydrolase enzymes act on the peptide bonds present in the protein. That's why these protein enzymes which are acting on proteins are called as peptidases, as these act on the peptide bonds present in the protein. And these peptidases again are of two types, endopeptidases and exopeptidases. Okay, this is not endo, this is exo. This is exopeptidases. Endopeptidases means which attack the internal peptide bonds and release peptide fragments like pepsin, trypsin. Okay, internal peptide bond means, as we know, proteins will have uh, primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary structures. Due to these different forms of the structure, what will happen, the bonds which are present internally, on these particular bonds few enzymes will act, and those are called as endopeptidases. These act on the peptide bonds which are present towards the or inside the protein molecule. Okay, and by acting on the internal peptide bonds, what will happen, peptide fragments will be released, and examples for endopeptidases are pepsin and trypsin. Now exopeptidases, which exopeptidases are the enzymes which act on the peptide bonds of terminal amino acids, and these exopeptidases are subdivided into carboxypeptidases and aminopeptidases. That means the enzymes which act on the peptide bonds which are present towards the terminal amino acids, and those enzymes will be called as exopeptidases, and these exopeptidases are again of two types. Those are carboxypeptidases and aminopeptidases. The proteolytic enzymes are responsible for digestion of proteins are produced by the stomach. Proteins are not digested in the mouth due to the absence of proteases in saliva. That means here digestion of these proteins is responsible for, by proteolytic enzymes. These proteolytic enzymes act on proteins and these are produced from stomach. That means proteins are digested by proteolytic enzymes, and these are produced by stomach, and proteins are not digested in mouth due to the absence of proteases in saliva. Okay, in the earlier classes also we discussed about the digestion of carbohydrates and lipids, from which only carbohydrates are digested in the mouth with alpha amylase activity. Okay, salivary alpha amylase activity, but not lipids and proteins are digested in mouth due to absence of protease enzymes in saliva. Okay, in saliva only alpha amylase enzyme is present, which facilitate the digestion of carbohydrates. Now let's see the process of digestion of proteins by gastric secretions. That means here gastric secretions are the major enzymes secretions which have major enzymes responsible for the digestion of proteins. Now let's see about them. Protein digestion brings in the stomach, that means protein digestion starts in the stomach, whereas carbohydrates are not digested in the stomach and lipids are very partially digested in the stomach. Okay, and these lipids are partially digested by uh, lipases enzymes, okay, which can withstand the pH, acidic pH. Those particular lipases enzymes can partially digest lipids in the stomach. Here protein digestion also starts in the stomach, okay, and gastric juice produced by stomach contains hydrochloric acid and a protease proenzyme, namely pepsinogen. So we all know stomach contains hydrochloric acid, and due to the presence of this hydrochloric acid only, stomach is in acidic conditions which will not facilitate the digestion of carbohydrates, okay, but presence of hydrochloric acid will facilitate the digestion of proteins, okay. Why? Because even these proteins are not even digested in mouth, but digestion of carbohydrates can be achieved from mouth itself, okay. That's why this digestion of proteins is designed with hydrochloric acid at stomach, okay. And gastric juices like hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen are present in the stomach, okay, and these are produced by stomach itself, and these are responsible for the protein digestion. Now let's see about hydrochloric acid first. This hydrochloric acid, the pH of stomach is less than 2 due to the presence of HCl secreted by parental cells of gastric gland, okay. Here what happens, we all know, due to presence of hydrochloric acid, pH levels of stomach is very low. That means it consists of a acidic pH, and this pH value is less than 2, okay, and this HCl is secreted by parental cells of gastric gland, okay. That means gastric gland which is present with the stomach is responsible for the secretion of HCl by parental cells of gastric gland. And this acid performs two important functions, that is denaturation of proteins and killing of certain microorganisms, and the denatured proteins are more susceptible to produce proteases for digestion. Okay, what happens in the stomach? This HCl or the hydrochloric acid is responsible for the denaturation of proteins as well as killing or elimination of microorganisms which enter our body through food. These two can be eliminated. That means denaturation of proteins can be achieved, and also elimination of microorganisms also can be achieved by this HCl presence in the stomach. And the denatured proteins, that means the proteins which are denatured with the HCl are more susceptible to proteases for digestion. That means after treatment of HCl on these proteins, action of proteases will be very easy on proteins, okay. Now let's see about pepsin. Pepsin is produced by a cells of the stomach as pepsinogen, and the inactive zymogen or proenzyme pepsinogen is converted into active pepsin either by autocatalysis brought about by other pepsin molecules or by gastric HCl. What happens here? This pepsin is produced from stomach as pepsinogen. This is the inactive form of uh, the component pepsin. Okay, this pepsinogen is uh, inactive zymogen, and proenzyme pepsinogen is converted into active pepsin by autocatalysis. That means autocatalysis means a small fragment of pepsin will activate this pepsinogen into pepsin. That means autocatalysis. That catalysis will be occurred by itself only. That's why we call it as autocatalysis. That means brought about by other pepsin molecule or by gastric HCl. Okay, either autocatalysis will happen or catalysis will be done with other pepsin molecule or by gastric HCl. By this catalysis process, this pepsinogen will be converted into pepsin, and this pepsin is an acid stable endopeptidase optimally active at a very low pH. That means this pepsin is acid stable endopeptidase. Endopeptidase means this pepsin will act on the bonds which are present inside the protein molecule, protein structure. Okay, this will act on the bonds which are present inside the protein structure, and this pepsin is it can act in acidic conditions also. That means at very low pH it can even act. And the active site of the enzyme contains two carboxyl groups which are maintained at low pH. That means this pepsin enzyme contains active site. That means every enzyme will have an active site which will support the attachment of the substrate, no? And this pepsin also contains an active site, and this active site contains two carboxyl groups, and this will maintain which are maintained at low temperature, that low pH. That means pH of this particular active site is maintained by these two carboxyl groups. And pepsin is the most predominant gastric protease which preferentially cleaves peptide bonds formed by amino groups of phenylalanine or tyrosine or leucine. What happens here? Pepsin is the most predominant gastric protease. That means very effective gastric protease, and it cleaves peptide bonds formed by amino groups of phenylalanine or tyrosine or leucine. That means pepsin is responsible for the breakdown of peptide bonds of amino acids phenylalanine, tyrosine or leucine. And this pepsin digestion of proteins results in peptides and a few amino acids which act as stimulants for the release of the hormone cholecystokinin from the duodenum. That means this pepsin digestion of proteins will result in peptides and a few amino acids. That means after digestion of proteins by pepsin, as a result of this reaction, peptides and few amino acids will be formed, and these will stimulate the release of hormone cholecystokinin from the duodenum. That means after the action of pepsin for proteins digestion, peptides and few amino acid will be produced, and as a result of this, these will stimulate the release of hormone cholecystokinin from the duodenum. So this is how pepsin will act. Okay. And the next one is renin. Actually, this apart from hydrochloric acid and pepsin, this renin is also one of the important proteolytic enzyme responsible for the digestion of proteins. Okay, but this renin is only seen in children. Okay, this enzyme is also called as chymosin and is found in the stomach of infants and children. Okay, it is also called as chymosin and only present in stomach of infants and children. Renin is involved in the curdling of milk. That means as children and infants, their major dietary component is milk. That particular milk is curdled. That means milk is converted into in the form of a curd components. This is achieved with renin enzyme. It converts milk protein casein to calcium para caseinate. Okay, here what will happen? Milk protein casein is converted into calcium para caseinate. Okay, this process is nothing but curdling of milk and which can be effectively digested by pepsin. That means milk protein casein is not easily digested. That's why this casein is converted into calcium para caseinate, which is easily digested by pepsin. And if you see, renin is absent in adult individuals. Okay, that's why digestion of milk and milk products is little slow in adults. That's why while for better digestion of food, what everyone will say, don't eat curd or milk products at night. Mainly for adults, what will they tell? Don't consume any curd or milk products at night. It will it will stop the proper digestion of the digestive system. So this is all due to the absence of renin in adult individuals. Okay, now let's see the process digestion of proteins by pancreatic proteases. Okay, the proteases of pancreatic juices are secreted as zymosins. Zymosins means these are the inactive form of any enzyme and then converted into active form. This processes are initiated by the release of two polypeptide hormones, namely cholecystokinin and secretin from the intestine. That means all the proteases or the proteolytic enzymes of pancreatic juice are secreted as zymosins, that means inactive forms, and these are converted into active forms, and this can be achieved by the release of two polypeptide hormones like cholecystokinin and secretin. These are the two enzymes which are responsible for the formation of active form of all the zymosin proteases. Now let's see about release and activation of zymosins. That means how these inactive forms are activated. Now let's see. The key enzyme for activation of zymosin is enteropeptidase, produced by intestinal mucosal epithelial cells. That means key enzyme, that is important enzyme for the activation of zymosin is an enteropeptidase, that is intestinal that is produced by intestinal mucosal epithelial cell. Here what happens, the key enzyme, that is the very important enzyme for the activation of zymosins is enteropeptidase, and it is produced from intestinal mucosal epithelial cells. intestinal epithelial from intestinal mucosal epithelial cells. And this enteropeptidase cleaves of the hexapeptide from the N-terminal end of trypsinogen to produce trypsin and activate the enzyme. What it will do? What is the action of this enteropeptidase? It will cleave or remove the hexapeptide from the N-terminal end of trypsinogen. From the N-terminal end of trypsinogen, hexapeptide part is removed, and finally trypsin, which is the active form, will be produced. Trypsin in turn activates other trypsinogen molecules. Further, trypsin is the common activator of all other pancreatic zymosins to produce the active proteases, namely chymotrypsin, elastase and carboxypeptidase. What happens here? Here trypsin will be activated by enteropeptidase. Enteropeptidase is the enzyme which act on the trypsinogen to form its active form trypsin by the removal of a hexapeptide fragment from the N-terminal end of this trypsinogen. And what this trypsin will do in return, after the reaction of enteropeptidase, this trypsin will activate other trypsinogen molecules. Okay, other trypsinogen molecules will be activated by the first trypsin molecule produced by the action of enteropeptidase, and this particular trypsin will activate trypsinogen molecules. And here what we can understand, this trypsin is the common activator of all other pancreatic zymosins. That means firstly trypsin should be activated with enteropeptidase, and further it will activate the other trypsinogen molecule and also all other pancreatic zymosins. Okay. Finally, after the activation of this trypsin and the action of this trypsin, many proteases will be activated and formed like trypsin, elastase and carboxypeptidase. These activated forms will be produced. Okay. Now let's see about the specificity and action of pancreatic proteases. Here let's know about these pancreatic proteases, how specific they are. Okay, trypsin, chymotrypsin and elastase are endopeptidases active at neutral pH. That means this trypsin, chymotrypsin and elastase, these are the three endopeptidases. That means these are the enzymes which act on the bonds present inside the protein structure, and these act only at the neutral pH. That means these will not act at both basic and acidic nature. It will be in a neutral pH. But gastric HCl is what? It is an acidic form. So to avoid that, gastric HCl is neutralized by pancreatic NaHCO3 in the intestine, and this creates favorable pH for the action of proteases. Okay, as this gastric HCl is acidic in nature, what will happen? This gastric HCl is neutralized by pancreatic NaHCO3. Okay, so that this enzymes can act at this favorable pH. That means after the neutralization of this gastric HCl with pancreatic NaHCO3 in the intestine, it will provide a favorable pH conditions to see the action of proteases. Okay, these proteases can actively uh, participate in the reactions, and finally digestion of proteins will be achieved. Okay, for instance, trypsin cleaves the peptide bonds, the carbonyl group of which is contributed by arginine and lysine. That means for the trypsin cleavage, of peptide bonds, it requires a carbonyl group, and this is contributed by amino acids arginine or lysine. Okay, a carbonyl group should be attached to trypsin for its cleavage of peptide bonds, and this is donated by arginine or lysine. And now let's see about action of carboxypeptidases. Here we have seen the action of this trypsin, chymotrypsin, which are endopeptidases. Now let's see about carboxypeptidases. The pancreatic carboxypeptidases are metalloenzymes that are dependent on Zn plus 2 for their catalytic activity. Hence, they are sometimes called Zn proteases. Okay, the pancreatic carboxypeptidases are metalloenzymes. That means they contain a metal ion, that is Zn plus 2, and they depend on Zn plus 2 for their catalytic activity. They require Zn plus 2 to undergo a catalytic reaction. That's why these are also called as zinc or Zn proteases. Carboxypeptidases are also called as zinc proteases. And the combined action of pancreatic proteases results in the formation of free amino acid and small peptidases. Here, by the action of pancreatic proteases and also by the action of carboxypeptidases, here formation of free amino acids and small peptides will be produced. Now let's see digestion of proteins by small intestinal enzymes. That means these all are the enzymes which are responsible for the stomach. Okay, and these are all pancreatic proteases. Now let's see how these proteins are digested in small intestine and with the small intestinal enzymes. The luminal surface of intestinal epithelial cells contains aminopeptidases and dipeptidases. That means the lumen surface of intestinal epithelial cells, that means intestinal epithelial cells will contain a lumen surface, and that lumen surface of intestinal epithelial cell contains aminopeptidases and dipeptidases. These are the two types of protein digesting enzymes, that is aminopeptidases and dipeptidases. And this aminopeptidase is a non-specific exopeptidase. That means it doesn't have any specificity. That's why it is a non-specific exopeptidase which repeatedly cleaves N-terminal amino acids. That means it will cleave N-terminal amino acids. That means terminal amino acids will be cleaved by the action of aminopeptidase. Okay, and the activity of this enzyme is rapid, and it will act repeatedly to cleave this N-terminal amino acids, and these will be cleaved one by one to produce free amino acids and smaller peptides. What will happen? This aminopeptidase will continuously cleave the N-terminal amino acids to produce free amino acids and smaller peptidases. Okay, smaller peptides. And dipeptidase act on different dipeptides to liberate amino acids. That means any dipeptide, that means these dipeptidases act on only dipeptides for liberation of free amino acids. Okay. So, by the action of all these enzymes, these will be digested to form small peptides and also free amino acids. And now, let's see how these free amino acids and peptides are absorbed. Okay, absorption of amino acids and dipeptides. The free amino acids, dipeptides, and to some extent tripeptides are absorbed by intestinal epithelial cells. Okay, here our intestinal epithelial cells can absorb these amino acids which are free in state and dipeptides, and in few cases tripeptides are also absorbed. Okay. And the dipeptidases, peptides and tripeptides, after being absorbed are hydrolyzed into free amino acids in the cytosol of epithelial cells. That means even though these dipeptides and tripeptides are absorbed in their di and tri forms, these are again hydrolyzed to free fatty acids. That means dipeptides and tripeptides are again cleaved to form free amino acids in the cytosol of the epithelial cells. Okay. The activities of dipeptidases are high in these cells. That means activities of dipeptidases are high in these cells. These cells, these dipeptidase peptides or the action of dipeptidases enzymes is high in cytosol of epithelial cell. Therefore, after a protein meal, only the free amino acids are found in the portal vein. Okay, due to the action of this dipeptidases enzymes, after a completion of a protein meal, free amino acids are seen in the portal vein due to the action of this dipeptidases. And the small intestine possess an efficient system to absorb free amino acids. L amino acids are more rapidly absorbed than D amino acids. The transport of L amino acid occurs by the active process in contrast to D amino acids, which takes place by a simple diffusion. See what happens? The small intestine will have an efficient system to absorb these free amino acids. Okay. Apart from dipeptides and tripeptides, absorption of this free amino acids is very important. And for this, small intestine have an efficient system. L amino acids are more rapidly absorbed than D amino acids. Okay, that means L amino acids are more fastly absorbed when compared to D amino acid absorption, and the transport of L amino acid occurs by an active process in contrast to D amino acids, which takes place by a simple diffusion. That means here L amino acids transportation is very active, and this contains contrast. That means it has difference with D amino acid absorption, as this D amino acids these D amino acids will be absorbed with simple diffusion. Okay, now let's see about mechanism of amino acid absorption. Mechanism of amino acid absorption. Amino acids are primarily absorbed by a similar mechanism as described for the transport of D-glucose. Okay, if you remember the absorption of D-glucose, it shares the same symport of Na plus transportation, and it is based on the concentration gradient. Okay, this Na plus will move towards the lower concentration area, and along with it will take the glucose molecule also. Okay, so these amino acids also share the same mechanism for which is seen in the transportation of the glucose, and it is basically a Na plus dependent active process which is linked with the transport of Na plus. That means transportation of amino acids is also a Na plus dependent active process, and it is linked with the transportation of Na plus. As the Na plus diffuses along the concentration gradient, the amino acids also enter the intestinal cell. Here what happens? Based on the concentration gradient, this Na plus diffuses through the membrane, and along with Na plus, these amino acids will also enter the intestinal cell. Both Na plus and amino acids share a common carrier and transported together. The energy is supplied indirectly by ATP. That means again this Na plus and amino acids share a common carrier and transported together, and this require an ATP or energy supply in the form of ATP. And Na plus independent system of amino acid transport across intestinal cell has also been identified. That means not all amino acids are transported through this Na plus dependent system. Few amino acids or Na plus independent system of amino acid transport across intestinal cell is also been seen, and the compound cytokinin is inhibited. It inhibits Na plus independent transport system. That means even though Na plus independent transport of amino acids is seen in intestinal cells, this is inhibited by cytocholine. Okay, cytocholine. And another transport system to explain the mechanism of amino acid transfer across membrane in the intestine and kidney has been put forth. That means even though another systems for the to explain the mechanism of amino acid transfer across membrane in intestine and kidney has also been seen. That means another mechanisms for the transfer of these amino acids in intestine and kidney membranes is also seen, and this is known as gamma glutamyl cycle or Meister cycle, and involves a tripeptide, namely glutathione. That means these amino acids are not only transported through Na plus dependent system and Na plus independent system, these are also transported with another mechanisms like gamma glutamyl cycle or Meister cycle. Here tripeptide glutathione will participate. Okay, 3 ATP are utilized for the transport of a single amino acid by this cycle. For this reason, Meister cycle is not common transport system for amino acid. That means 3 ATP molecules are utilized for the transportation of one single amino acid. That means in the Na plus dependent and Na plus independent system, there will be only utilization of one ATP for each amino acid, whereas in this Meister cycle there will be utilization of 3 ATP molecules for each amino acid. Okay, and this is the major reason Meister cycle is not a common transport system for amino acids. If so, what will happen? There will be utilization of more ATP molecules for this amino acids transport. Okay, however, the cycle is operative for rapid transport of cysteine and glutamine. That means this particular master system is only responsible for transportation of cysteine and glutamine. Only these two amino acids were transferred with the help of gamma glutamyl cycle or master cycle. Okay, the gamma glutamyl cycle appears to be important for the metabolism of glutathione. Since this tripeptide undergoes rapid turnover in the cells, there may be more physiological significance of gamma glutamyl cycle. That means for the trans for the metabolism of glutathione, this gamma glutamyl cycle is very important, and this tripeptide, that is glutathione, undergoes rapid turnover in the cells, and this gamma glutamyl cycle also have many physiological significances. Okay, if you see this topic once again, it is little complicated when compared to carbohydrates and lipids. Once see again. Here peptidases are the enzymes which will participate in the digestion of these proteins. Okay, proteolytic enzymes, those are peptidases, and these are two types, endo and exo. Endo means these will break inside bonds of the protein structure. Exo means outside bonds which are present with the amino acids in the protein structure. And these protein digestion mostly dependent on gastric secretions. Those are like hydrochloric acid, pepsin and renin in children. Okay, these are the three gastric secretions. Okay, this gastric secretions like hydrochloric acid, pepsin and renin in children will digest proteins at stomach. Okay, and after digestion at stomach, what will happen? Proteins digestion by pancreatic enzymes or pancreatic proteases will occur. Okay, and pancreatic proteases will digest these proteins, and these pancreatic proteases are always in the form always are in the inactive form, that means in the zymosin form, and these are activated by trypsin or by other components like enteropeptidases. This enteropeptidase will activate this trypsin, and trypsin will in turn activate other enzymes. And after this activity, what will happen? Individual proteases, that means these pancreatic proteases individually will act. That means these trypsin, chymotrypsin, elastin, carboxypeptidases, these individually act on those particular proteins. Okay, after that what will happen? Digestion of proteins by small intestinal enzymes like aminopeptidases and dipeptidases. Okay, these are the enzymes. These are the enzymes which are helpful in the digestion of these proteins at small intestine. Firstly, what digestion is started at stomach by gastric juices. Later digestion by these pancreatic proteases. Later by few enzymes like aminopeptidases and dipeptidases at small intestine, and later absorption of these amino acids and dipeptidases with the help of Na plus dependent system and Na plus independent system, and few amino acids like glutamine, few amino acids like glutamine and cysteine are transported through special mechanism or special cycle called gamma glutamyl cycle. Okay, so absorption is done at stomach with gastric juices and pancreatic proteases, and at small intestine with another proteolytic enzymes, and at the absorption level these are again transported with Na plus dependent system based on concentration gradient similar to that of transportation of glucose, and in some cases Na plus independent system is also observed, and few amino acids like cysteine and glutamine, these are transported with the help of this cysteine Meister cycle or gamma glutamyl cycle. Okay, this is all about digestion and absorption of proteins. Please keep material provided with you while listening to this class. If you have any doubts, please you can ping me on my number. Thank you, students.